I declare you both as a married couple. But do anyone have any objection? Please raise your hand. The priest asked, looking around, and no one raised their hand. Jungkook wanted to raise his hand, but he stopped himself, clenching his fist, digging his nails into his skin. I object. Everyone looked at the entrance door. They saw a handsome man standing at the entrance. Hosak bro? Wayan thought, looking at him, who was smirking at her. Sorry, ladies and gentlemen, I'm late because my flight got delayed, Hosak said, walking on the aisle. So the thing is, I don't want this marriage to happen, as well as Wayan. Hosak smiled, looking at Wayan, who was looking back at him with wide eyes. Hosak walked back to his room after attending his brother's engagement. There, he heard someone's cry. Mrs. Kim? Hosak thought, going inside Mrs. Kim's room. There, he saw Jisoo crying silently. He quickly sat beside Mrs. Kim on the bed, holding her hands. Why are you crying, Mrs. Kim? What happened? Hosak asked, and Mrs. Kim cried more, hugging Hosak. I'm so bad. I'm so selfish. That's why God gave me this punishment, Mrs. Kim said, wiping her tears with her hands. Mrs. Kim, please calm down, Hosak said, taking out kerchief from his pocket, giving it to Mrs. Kim. I did a big mistake today. I saw her in the engagement ceremony. She looked so sad. She didn't wanted this engagement. She agreed to marry Bogum because of me. My baby is not happy with this marriage. I'm such a bad mother, Mrs. Kim cried more, clutching Hosak's coat. Don't cry, Mrs. Kim. We will figure out something, Hosak said sadly. Hosak, can you please make a video of me? Mrs. Kim said, and Hosak nodded his head, taking out his mobile phone. Hey baby, I won't be there when you turn 18. I guess your mama did a great mistake, babe. Please forgive me if you can, love. You know, Wayan, my last wish is you should marry the person you love, baby. I love you, Wayan. I love you so much. I hope you forgive me. Your mama loves you so much. Now Wayan was on the floor, crying her heart out after hearing her mom's last message, mumbling, "Thank you, Mom." Hosak made Wayan stand up on her feet. He wiped her tears. Hey, why are you crying? Mrs. Kim must be watching you from heaven, and she definitely won't like when you cry, Hosak said, and Wayan stopped crying, nodding her head. So answer honestly, don't fear anyone, okay? It is your life. You should decide who you wanna marry, okay? Hosak said, and Wayan nodded her head. So you wanna marry Bogum Hyung? Hosak asked, and Wayan looked at her father, who was glaring at her, mouthing to say yes. But Wayan shook her head, saying no. I don't wanna marry Bogum, Wayan said, making the guests gasp. Do you love someone? Hosak asked, and Wayan said yes. Is he here with us? Hosak asked, and Wayan nodded her head. Then why are you standing here? Go and marry him, you pabo, Hosak said, hitting Wayan's head playfully. And Wayan giggled, getting down from the stage, running towards Jungkook. Wayan smiled, hugging Jungkook, and the guests gasped in shock after seeing Wayan hugging a waiter. Wayan held Jungkook's hands. You wanna marry me, Cookie? Wayan asked with a glint of happiness in her eyes. And Jungkook quickly nodded his head, saying yes. Wayan giggled, grabbing Jungkook's hand, running towards the priest. She pushed Bogum softly, making Jungkook stand on Bogum's place. Wayan removed Bogum's blazer, putting it on Jungkook. Kim Wayan, do you take Chon Jungkook for your lawful? I, Kim Wayan, take Chon Jungkook as my lawful husband to have and to hold, from this day forward, for better, for worse, for richer, for poor, in sickness and in health, until death do us apart, Wayan said, looking into Jungkook's teary-eyed eyes, making the guests go at their cuteness. I, Jungkook, take Kim Wayan as lawful wife to have and to hold, from this day forward, for better, for worse, for richer, for poorer, in sickness and in health, until death do us part, Jungkook said, the wedding vows, making Wayan smile in content. Wyan smiled, pulling her diamond ring out of her finger, which was gifted by her mother, sliding it on Jungkook's finger. Love, you don't have to. Jungkook laughed softly as Wyan kept her finger on his lips. Love you too, baby, Jungkook said when they finally broke apart. They stood there for a moment, just looking at each other. They were both so happy, and they couldn't wait to start their new life together. Jungkook smiled as he watched Wyan laughing and talking with her friends at the after party. She looked so adorable, especially with her cute smile. Jungkook couldn't believe that Wyan was his wife now. It was a dream come true. He looked down at the ring on his finger and smiled again. It was a constant reminder of their love and commitment to each other. Wyan looked at Jungkook in awe as she saw her husband kneeling down in front of her. He was dressed in a handsome tuxedo and he had a charming smile on his face. May I have the honor to dance with you, gorgeous? Jungkook asked. Wyan giggled and nodded her head. She took Jungkook's hand and stood up. They both went towards the dance floor. Wyan smiled, keeping her hand on Jungkook's shoulder, and Jungkook rested his hand on Wyan's face. They both continued to dance on the slow romantic music. I didn't know that you can dance, Mr. Happy. Wyan smiled but yelped when Jungkook swirled her around. You didn't know many things about me, Mrs. Wifey, Jungkook said, resting his chin on Wyan's shoulder, dancing slowly. Well, I would love to find everything about you, Happy, Wyan said, turning back, circling her arms around Jungkook's neck. We both have our entire lives to know about each other, beautiful. Jungkook smiled, showing his bunny teeth. Yep, we'll be together forever, Wyan said, looking at her husband's bunny lips. Jungkook came out of the washroom after drying his hands, but he grunted when Mr. Kim punched him on his stomach. Jungkook fell on the ground, clutching his stomach in pain. He looked up at Mr. Kim, who was standing in front of him, breathing heavily.
Congratulations, you finally got successful in trapping my daughter into your fake love.
I didn't trap your daughter, Jungkook said, his voice weak. I love her.
You are lying,
Mr. Kim said.
You only want her for her money.
Mr. Kim raised his foot to kick Jungkook. Jungkook was just getting beaten by Mr. Kim. He didn't dare to raise his hand, because he respects his elders a lot. Wyan widened her eyes when she heard commotion from outside, so she ran out of her room. There she saw her father hitting Jungkook, and Jungkook was covering himself. Dad! Wyan screamed, covering Jungkook behind her. Stop hitting my husband, for God's sake, Wyan said, pushing Jungkook's face towards her chest, covering him more.
This guy married you for money. I'm gonna...
Mr. Kim screamed, trying to hit Jungkook. Over my dead body, Wyan said, glaring her father, and Mr. Kim retracted his hand back. And Jungkook loves me, not my money, Wyan said.
You are being naive, Wyan,
he said.
This man is only using you. He doesn't love you.
He loves me, Wyan said, and I love him. Mr. Kim shook his head.
You are making a big mistake. You are going to regret this.
Everyone is not selfish like you, Dad. And okay, if that's what you want, I'm leaving this house and money. I'm going with Jungkook, Wyan said, making Mr. Kim shocked. Cookie, will you take me with you? Wyan smiled, looking into Jungkook's doe eyes. Gladly, baby, Jungkook said, and Wyan smiled, getting up with Jungkook. She went towards her room, holding Jungkook's hand. Wyan made him sit on the bed, and she sat on Jungkook's. She checked her hubby's face to check whether he is injured or not. She sighed in relief because Jungkook's face only had some minor scratches. She applied gel ointment on his scratch carefully, making Jungkook smile in content. The newly married couple stood in front of the helper quarters holding hands. Wyan had taken her mother's photo frame and they had left the Kim's mansion together. Mrs. John opened the door, glaring at Jungkook. You didn't bother to tell me that Wyan loves you? Mrs. John said, hitting Jungkook's back playfully. "Ah, Mom, please stop. Even I don't know. Wayan just told me yesterday that she loves me." Jungkook whined, trying to dodge his mom's hits. Wayan laughed, closing her mouth. Mrs. John looked at Wayan with a big smile. "Thank you for marrying this coconut head. You are best for him. My blessings are always with you both," Mrs. John said, and Wayan smiled, hugging Mrs. John, getting motherly warmth. Mrs. John took out a diamond chain from her bag. "Well, I bought this for Jungkook's future partner. Will you accept this first gift from your mother-in-law?" Mrs. John said, and Wayan grinned, nodding her head enthusiastically. Mrs. John made her wear the diamond chain. "You guys sleep here, I will sleep in the garden," Mrs. Jones said, going out. Jungkook was about to stop her. "No, Mom, what if it rains at night? Please sleep with us," Wayan said, and Jungkook looked at her with fond eyes. Mrs. Jones' idea was to divide the room into two parts with a big screen in the middle. This was to give some privacy for the newlyweds, while still allowing them to be in the same room. It also made the room look more spacious. Wayan and Jungkook giggled at Mrs. Jones' idea. Mrs. Jones turned off the lights, drifting off to sleep within a few seconds. Jungkook removed his blazer while lying down, and Wayan shifted uncomfortably while sleeping. "Cookie, this dress is irritating me. Please give me your clothes, Abhi," Wayan pouted cutely. Jungkook smiled, handing her his cotton shirt and sweatpants. Wayan quickly changed into Jungkook's clothes, snuggling up to her husband. They lay there together in the comfort of their new home, enjoying each other's company. Wayan felt safe and loved in Jungkook's arms, and Jungkook was so happy to have Wayan by his side. "I love you, Cookie," Wayan said. "I love you too, baby," Jungkook replied. They drifted off to sleep with big smiles on their faces. Next morning, Wayan got up from her sleep, yawning cutely. She noticed that Mrs. John already went to work. She opened the door. She noticed an envelope lying on the floor. Wayan sat beside her husband and said, "Cookie, you got an envelope." Jungkook yawned, opening his eyes. He rubbed them sleepily, then tore open the envelope. He began to read it, his half-hooded eyes scanning the lines. Suddenly, Jungkook's eyes widened. He grinned as he hugged his wife tightly. "Baby, get ready. We are moving to Crestmont Villa tomorrow,"